Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the opening session on the data management stage here at the Data Innovation Summit. Personally, I'm very excited about the forthcoming 2 days because I think the space has gone through so many changes, which I will talk through today, and there will be, I think, a lot of interesting discussion, a lot of interesting networking, a lot of interesting content shared from both vendors and end users at this conference. My small contribution to this conference is a presentation around the synergies of having an analytics data pipeline that enables active intelligence. Now, let's take a look at where we are today. We recently ran a survey with IDC, and essentially business decision makers there said that less than half of them could actually utilize data optimally for decision making. Less than a third of participants in that survey said that they're struggling to drive transformation from data. So that's kind of the general state of the union. However, if we're kind of filtering on the top performers, we're seeing that more than 75% of those said that they'd actually been able to drive revenue increases and improved business outcomes and optimized their processes. So clearly, for those that do this right, there are huge upsides. Now, why is that delta so big? Well, I think I could have shown you this slide 10 years ago, right? I think one of the biggest obstacles that we as an industry have had for a long time is this compartmentalization between data integration on one side and data analytics on the other side. And we've had tools and methodologies that have been very separate for these two areas, where one usually targets IT and the other one targets business. Now, the CIO and the IT department have worked very hard to try to provide as much data as possible. And yet, the line of businesses often still don't believe that they have access to the right data that they need for improved decision making. And this misalignment has actually given rise, for example, to the role of the CDO to drive more value out of that data and bridging that gap. And of course, this compartmentalization that we're seeing here has also led naturally to a more passive approach to data analytics, where you're treating data as a historic asset, as a static and batched processed that essentially runs from a few transactional systems. And this, while our needs are more real-time than they've ever been before, especially in the wake of the pandemic. Now, I think the big catalyst number one is that we're now seeing a convergence in the market between these two different areas, data integration and data analytics. And with that convergence, the gap is gradually closing and more synergies can be exploited, which is that business value in the middle of that Venn diagram. So I think that opens a lot of opportunities. And the second piece that we've seen is that there's been a lot of change in the wake and during the pandemic. I think you can all agree. I call it the digital switch, where organizations have taken a step change in modernizing their architectures. And that really has led to three trends in particular that Qlik is exploiting into data integration space. The first one is cloud application development. And this is less about analytics, and it's more about trying to leverage as much as possible from the existing data that you have to run more modern applications that often have a cloud foundation. And this could be the applications that you have on your phone, the shopping applications, the banking applications, etc. They need to have a cloud kind of foundation, and they're running on the cloud. However, they need to leverage all of these transactional systems, all of these mainframes that organizations still have today and that run their business. Vanguard is an example. They replicate 20 million rows of data in near real time from mainframe systems into AWS cloud using Qlik. And that has enabled them to become cloud first. Lastminute.com can react in real time to payment defaults, and that has really helped reduce their failure rates from 5% to 3%. The second big trend that we see is one that you should all be familiar with, and it is the data warehouse modernization that has been occurring over the past couple of years. We know that data warehouses have been around since the 80s, frankly, and they have been extremely resource intensive. They've been tough to build, and that has spawned industries around it, like the ETL space and vendors like Informatica and many others, building the abilities to do that extract, transform, load into the data warehouses. What has changed again, and cloud is the catalyst for this, is that we now have a new generation of data warehouses that are much more agile, that are much more elastic, where you can put the data in the cloud, and essentially the queries and the compute is what they charge for. And as a result of that, you can start small and go big much easier. So it removes a lot of complexity out of the system. And essentially, Qlik, with its data warehouse automation, is helping remove the manual processes of moving data and replacing traditional ETL with more modern self-service capabilities. To talk about this, do not miss the session after this, which is Babu Kutala, the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at ABB. He will share how they essentially integrated SAP data into Snowflake with Qlik. And again, a key component here was real-time streaming aspects, just like in cloud application development. The last trend is modern data lake environments. And again, the first generation of data lakes, they really spawned the big data era, and they held big promises. But as you all know, when you put the data into these sort of connected nodes and MapReduce, in very many cases, you were struggling to get any value out of that. You were struggling with the schema on read. I think these next generation data lakes, again, are much more elastic. You can stream the data in real time, and you're removing a lot of complexity in the system to set these up. And we see here, for example, Jaguar Land Rover that have close to 200 systems that are more than 15 years old. And these are the systems that still run their business. And they need to be able to stream the data in real time from those legacy systems into a more modern cloud-based data lake environment, in this case on Google. And the vast majority of use cases they have need to be either within the day or within the hour. So it needs to be very kind of real time as it updates. But the interesting thing here is that as they moved this data to a modern data lake environment, they essentially saw a quantum leap in the amount of queries that they could run on top of that data. And those queries equate to business value. Now, frankly, all of these trends are increasingly converging. And in the cloud world, many people speak about the lakehouse environment. And what Qlik can really do is, with change data capture streaming, with data warehouse automation, and with data lake creation, open a lot of opportunities to bring all of that data to the users, right? And that is a common theme that we see, that if you bring the data to the users and then the compute to the data, you will see much more value that people get from that, whether that is on-premise or in the cloud or in a very distributed type of fashion. Now, these two trends that I've been speaking about, the first one about data integration and data analytics converging, and the second trend about how the digital switch essentially saw this catalyst of people streaming data in real time into cloud-based environments, has led to a huge opportunity for the entire market. Finally, we can do big data. Finally, we can put ML and AI on top of that. And we also see a lot of opportunities for automation that can be spawned from these type of architectures. And that is what Qlik is really trying to tap into with its active intelligence story. Because if you can free the data, which is what we've spoken about so far, and you can bring that to the people, then, and if you can bring more opportunities for users to find that data, for example, through a data catalog, and then you can help them understand that data through world-class data analytics, whether that is in Qlik or any other analytic tools that organizations may be using, then that provides much more value. So that is the convergence overlap. But then there's also that last mile about actioning the data so that you can have more informed actions in the moments and in the processes. That opens a lot of opportunities. And this is what we mean when we're talking about enabling active intelligence and that analytics data pipeline. So what are the synergies that can be exploited if you're having an analytics data pipeline like this? Well, the baseline, of course, is streaming data and real-time information. If you have that, then you can have much more business process integration. So we see a lot of opportunities of essentially in the API economy, connecting different applications so that they can talk to one another, and that can spawn much more integration and action in the process. We see, as I said, more AI and more ML and augmented capabilities that can spawn all kinds of micro insights in the moment, way before you're building a dashboard. And of course, that can trigger a number of action triggers when you need them, those micro insights, which may or may not involve a human. And of course, we can also move the data from being sort of raw to analytics ready to business ready increasingly. So if we're flipping that kind of architecture diagram that I showed earlier to look more like a pipeline, that also kind of explains how Qlik is exploiting these opportunities. Number one, it's extremely important to, again, reiterate that this is about interoperability. This is about openness and working with both private and public clouds and on-premises data throughout this chain. And once you sort of free that data, which has been enabled by these trends I've spoken about, you can have that transformation. And in that transformation, you get a lot of opportunities of derived data from that, which can be reused for other applications and other use cases. Gartner speaks about applications X, which is all of the data sources that are not your typical kind of rows and columns that you can leverage as well. You can put that data in a data catalog, which really is a critical component of making those data producers and data consumers that are on those two sides of the spectrum increasingly converge and meet with one another. And there you should really be able to find data through natural language search and through business glossaries. And increasingly, people are talking about this notion of analytic value scores. And data lineage, data observability, data quality are all key components here that can be exploited, where you can see what quality the data has, how many people are using it, how useful it would be for particular use cases. And of course, all of this enables you to get insights way before, in many cases, you're building a dashboard. But if you want to do that, you should be able to push that into your analytical tool of choice. And with Qlik, you can do things like conversational analytics, augmented advanced analytics, mobile analytics, and embedded analytics. But in many cases, and this is the opportunity with those micro insights, you should have instead conditional alerting and reporting that give you those personalized micro insight feeds that may enable you to have an action in the moment and in the process, whether that involves a human or happens automatically. We also see a lot of opportunities with application automation to have process workflows that connects these workflows between different software as a service applications. The other synergy that we spoke about there is the collaboration and orchestration opportunities that open up if you have an analytic pipeline like this. It shouldn't just happen at the end of the chain once a dashboard is built and you share that on Slack or Teams, but it should happen in this entire chain as information producers, as information consumers are meeting and overlapping with one another in that pipeline creation and in that data ops, which becomes then much more agile. So there's a lot of orchestration opportunities in a more agile fashion that opens up as well here as you're moving from that streaming real-time data, making it analytics ready, business ready, and actionable. So once this happens, this is the foundation for our vision to enable active intelligence, a new fresh perspective that reflects today's realities of where the data sits, and it will be owned by both IT and business, and it's constantly changing and it needs to be used in real time. Of course, all this has to happen at cloud scale across vendor and private clouds with both structured and unstructured data that can be governed end to end. Now, to sum it up, number one, there's a convergence in the market between data integration and data analytics. We've also seen this notion of a digital switch in the wake of a pandemic where so many organizations, frankly, to keep the lights on in many cases, have taken drastic steps forward to modernize their architectures, which enable these trends to be exploited around application modernization, data warehouse automation and modernization, and data lake creation. As that has happened, where both the demand side and the supply side has opened opportunities to kind of cross the chasm to the next S-curve here, and enabling more opportunities for this notion of moving from passive increasingly to reactive and increasingly to active intelligence. Now, we know that organizations will be looking to vendors that can embed tactical actions into workflows, processes, and moments. But we also know that strategically, organizations want to synthesize data and signals early in this distributed landscapes that they have, enabling them to embark on more informed paths. We know for a fact that the velocity of data is accelerating, and we have new enablers with technology that can handle that, and new needs as well. In the wake of the pandemic, we've seen, for example, disruptions in supply chain, right? With PPE, with toilet paper, and in 2021, increasingly with all kinds of components in the supply chain. And for that, we need to follow up with more quicker informed action across that distributed data landscape. Now, we want to be your partner in enabling that move from increasingly reactive to active intelligence. And this is what Qlik aims to do as we're increasingly entering into that third S-curve and the autonomous and automation era. So thank you very much. That was my presentation. I hope it sort of sets the foundation for some of the discussions that are to be had over the coming days. Again, do not miss Chief Data and Analytics Officer Babu Kutala at ABB right after this session. He will share how they integrate SAP data with Snowflake using Qlik. And if you want to discuss further around any of the topics that I've discussed around and how Qlik can help you close that gap between data, insights, and action, then do not hesitate to reach out to any of us who are here at this conference. With that, I thank you very much and hope you have a great session and great conference. Bye.